Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Martinez, and I'm on the State and Local Government Industry Solutions team here at Esri, and I will be your moderator today. I would like to welcome you to the November 2021 edition of the State and Local Connect webinar series, Embracing a GIS-Centric Digital Twin to Enable Your Community. This webinar series, which we've been running for over a year now, is focused on community building and information sharing specific to our state and local users like yourselves. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. The webinar is being recorded and you will receive an email with a link to the recording within the next week or so. We will have time at the end of the webinar to answer your questions, so please feel free to type them in the GoToWebinar questions pane throughout the presentation, and we will get to as many as time permits. Also, there will be a survey that will pop up on your screen after the webinar ends. If you can please take a minute to answer just a few questions, we would greatly appreciate it as we use that information to guide future webinars. So now I'd like to introduce our presenter today, Andy Lovell. Andy is a Senior Solutions Engineer in the AEC, Architecture, Engineering, and Construction groups at Esri, where he is focused on advising and supporting firms to create pathways for success through the integration of geospatial tools into their business processes. Prior to joining Esri, Andy has spent the past 20 years enabling technical and consulting geospatial services across all areas of AEC business, including environment, infrastructure, water, transportation, and urban planning. With a background in environmental sciences, Andy has applied his knowledge through a range of projects with all levels of government across the globe. So now I'll hand it over to Andy.
Sweet. Thanks for the introduction, Megan. Welcome, everybody, and of course, happy GIS Day. It's great to see so many folk here on the session for this month. I know we've all spent lots of time on webinars, but thanks for taking your time out to come and have a chat. As Megan said, if you've got questions as we go along today, please post them into the chat section and we'll get to as many of those as we can at the end. Just to give a bit of context here for this session, look, population growth, urbanisation, it's driving demand for new infrastructure, both built and natural, such as roads, facilities, green spaces. Yeah. Now, at the same time, much of our existing infrastructure is ageing, needs to be rebuilt or revitalised. One estimate recently was that global infrastructure investment and the spending for this is going to need to be in the order of about $94 trillion by 2040 to meet these demands. Now, add into this the impacts related to climate change, sustainability, and that's also requiring us to rethink how we plan, how we design, how we build and operate all of our cities, our assets, and the infrastructure that we rely on. Now, these decisions need to be undertaken at an ever-increasing pace. You know, there's often reduced budgets and almost always greater complexity. And our citizens, our stakeholders, are seeking more transparency within the government decisions that are being made. Now, there's more than enough media commentary as shown on screen here, you know, newspaper articles, television reports that are highlighting the challenges that are faced by all levels of government. And all of us are looking for ways to be more efficient, more effective, and more able to make good decisions. Now, all of these challenges have one key thing in common, and that's location. Now, to address these challenges, I really do see that we need to bring location and the geographic context into the operations of our communities. Our information doesn't exist in isolation, but it's connected, both through the built and the natural environments, where each offers constraints as well as opportunities that can drive positive change, where we can work together addressing these challenges. And this is where I see huge value, I mean, real value for embracing a GIS-centric digital twin, which is really about the betterment of our communities. Okay, so today, the session, we're going to cover three things. First one is we're going to talk about what is a digital twin to Esri and why this is of value to you. Second, we're going to talk about the role that GIS plays in this space and has done for quite some time. And thirdly, we're going to talk a bit about helping you finding a pathway forward to success, you know, a success that works for your community. Now, to help guide the conversation today, to give me a little bit of guidance on some of the highlights that I want to draw out, I'm going to start with just a couple of poll questions. And that's really just to get an understanding of who we have online with us here today. All right, so the first question that we're going to ask here is, how familiar are you with digital twins? And it's talking about within your organisation. So Megan, if you could open up the that poll for us, please. Thank you. Now, the options you've got on there, everything from, hey, we've got this nailed, you know, we're doing digital twins day in, day out, all the way down to, I'm not sure what a digital twin is, and fundamentally, that's why you're here to have a chat today. So great to see people jumping in, responding to that. Thank you very much. It's been interesting over time seeing how this spread of usage of digital twins has changed. From my own experience in industry, the growth that's been happening overall. A couple more seconds there. Brilliant. So the results up on screen, if they're not already. Thanks, Megan. The results that we've got here, it is interesting to see that there's still a lot of questions about what is a digital twin and understanding on that. And that's, again, so we'll dig into those sort of topics for you today. Now, the second poll that I want to ask of folks is, no matter where you're up to with digital twins, but it's where are you thinking you could apply digital twins? Or if you happen to be already, you know, where are you focused on those? So Megan, could you open up the poll for this one, please? Thanks. So the options on here, some common ones: planning, transport, public works, utilities. The other category, this is a personal ask for you. If you do tick the other category, it'd be awesome if you could add into the chat window what other means to you. And if you're already working in this space, send through your examples. I'd love to see them. Always looking for new and interesting ways that people are applying not just Esri's technology, but the geospatial tech as a whole and digital twins into their particular industry. Well, it's watching some numbers come in here. Quite a lot of people using it in planning space, mixed transport, public works. Also quite a lot of people with the other. Wow. We'll give folk a few more moments here to vote on that one. Right, and apologize. So Megan, if it's not already up on screen, if you could share those results to folks there. So I said, lots of people using digital twins or looking to do this in the planning space. Quite a number of folk in the other space. And again, if you have ticked other, it'd be really great if you could chat what it is, what department, what area of your organisation that you're using digital twins or looking to use digital twins. Alrighty, so let's get on with today. Let's get on with the core of why you're actually here. So again, today we're going to talk about what is a digital twin to Esri and why it's of value to you, the role that GIS can play in this space and has been for quite some time. And then thirdly, we're going to look at helping you get pathways forward for you to be successful within your community and your organisation. So look, just some quick definitions here. Look, many of you know a digital twin, as it says on screen, the virtual representation of the real world. And that includes the physical objects, processes, relationships, and behaviours. And GIS creates digital twins of the natural and the built and the social environments. Now, and it also is uniquely integrating many types of different digital models. Look, I've been working with GIS for a long time, like probably many of you, and reading these definitions, I can't help but ask myself, like, isn't this just what we've always done? This is fundamentally what GIS is. It's the bringing together of data and information models. Look, what we're saying here is that a digital twin is a thing. You could consider it a bit of a guiding light, perhaps a marketing term, aspirational phrase. Look, that is ultimately aiming to build kind of a sci-fi representation of the world. Location is what connects everybody with everything, and GIS allows you to model the environment and these connections. You know, it creates a digital representation of the systems and places, and by doing that, it allows you to gain better understandings, so you can take action, you know, make decisions. Now, Esri has been playing a big role in this capacity for a very long time, you know, and the reason why we are so well suited is because it's all about location and location at scale. We've been on this journey for years, and hey, look, now it has a shiny new name, digital twins. Now, I hope this resonates true with you from your own experience as well, because I believe that this is something that we have always done in GIS. Getting a bit deeper onto a modern digital twin, it's a powerful tool. Look, it allows you to abstract and model everything, bringing together many different information models. And when we look at digital twins and how they can be transforming what we do, we can start to think about the ways that Esri has already been playing in this role. Of the things we have on screen here, look, the first of these is our landscape information models, traditional GIS work. And we've been doing this for many, many years, been playing a big role, pulling together all kinds of landscape and environmental information about the world that's around us. Now, in more recent years, we've seen quite an acceleration in the development of BIM, so building information models. Now, these allow users to model very accurately, highly detailed representations of structures, of plants, facilities, the built environment. And then we have information models about managing networks. These are models that are managing linear assets in the connectivity. This could be something focused on assets, that's been using the ArcGIS utility network for bringing that information together, your sewers and power systems. And finally, we have the broader city information model. Now, this allows for big picture modeling at scale. It assists in workflows for urban planning, citizen engagement, and probably more recently, the last sort of half dozen years, starting to get into smart cities, smart community initiatives. Now, individually, if you look at these information models, it's clear these are completely different things, and each one by itself could be, by definition, considered to be a digital twin. And that's okay. It's there to solve a particular business challenge. Now, what ArcGIS does that no other technology can do is that it integrates and it connects all of these different types of digital twins. Esri could be the digital twin for your business challenge by itself, everything just in an Esri stack. Now, in other cases, Esri might just be an enabling technology, a piece that's bringing together and connecting other digital models, which ultimately is about adding value for communities so that people can get a more holistic view. Now, this is all really exciting and it highlights the unique power of ArcGIS, because nothing else has the capabilities to connect everything from these hyper detailed BIM, building information models, all the way through larger networks and processes, that can let you trace everything from inside of a particular structure all the way upstream for that network, and then give you an opportunity to see that context for the entire city view. Okay, now if you recall in the definition we discussed earlier, digital twin is including interconnected, the content and the behaviors and workflows. It's all about solving many of the challenges that organizations face, organizations like yours. And as I was just mentioning, it's about interconnecting all these different information models. Now, one of the biggest challenges that I've seen is often within the mindsets of some within organizations, that an integrated digital twin isn't just one solution. It's not just one product. It's an ecosystem of capabilities and applications that are being brought together by GIS to support these holistic and collaborative approaches. So again, it's not about one digital twin to rule them all. It's about having many digital twins that are integrated and interconnected and using shared information, but they're all focused on solving a particular challenge that the organization has. Okay, great. So we kind of got a sense of what a digital twin is, but why should you care? Like, what are some of the drivers for looking at digital twins? So some things to think on, and some of these will apply to you and others maybe less so, but some things that I think you should consider. One is around the high cost of recurring plan updates. Look, every time we rethink something, we're effectively starting over. And that starting over is costing us a lot of money. It's a lot of time and effort that people could be using to do other things that are perhaps of more importance. Additionally, there's the increased inefficiency overall, removing silos, easing the flow of information, as we move through different phases for a program or a project. starting to think more strategically, applying digital twins starts to pull us out of these silos. Now that allows us to start to create better accountability and improved transparency, all again aiming towards our goals. Now, we need to, and we can, demonstrate sustainability. Now, it's not just saying, hey, we're sustainable, that's great, but it's actually demonstrating it and showing that sustainability is happening, again, both in our built and in our natural worlds. Another couple of drivers here is that it really starts to highlight that in some areas, there's just insufficient access to our current GIS data. And so by opening up our GIS information, we start to show just how important GIS actually is to the world, about how important it is in the process of building digital twins. Now, this goes on further, it starts to allow us, we can start to maximize the investment that you've likely already made into the data and the technology space. But it's also about the people and getting the people's perspective on this, because the more things that we are doing, often, again, they're becoming more complicated, and in some ways we're getting less work done out of our people. And our people are the most important resource we have, because they're the ones who actually make all this stuff work. This starts to get us to think a little bit more broadly. We can start to think a little more differently, like perhaps our desire to have a more diverse community representation, or even simplifying the communications that we have with our communities, ensuring that we are actually doing what we're supposed to be doing. Look, all of these things are drivers for why we should be looking at a GIS-centric digital twin for our communities. Okay, now let's have a look at how GIS is actually doing this across the life cycle of digital twins. One of the powers of GIS that we've been talking about is that it creates relationships and it streamlines workflows. Everything has location, so location becomes that common key that integrates these siloed ideas and solutions, and allows for modeling of quite complex life cycles. The first thing to think of here is really around the data capture and the integration. This is foundational to a digital twin. It's all about being able to model that data, capturing it, integrating it, and then managing it, and its associated attributes and the behaviors all throughout its life cycle from the start to the end. Next is about bringing that data to life. But we've been visualizing information for a very long time. That's been at the core of what Esri does. But now we're starting to bring in real information, in order to understand what's happening now in the real time. But as you know, digital twins have moved beyond just looking at the current state, the pretty picture, the visual twin that many folks show. Now we're starting to think about ways that we can actually analyze and predict, not just showing what's already happened, but start to predict what is going to happen, to simulate things, running scenarios, testing changes, seeing what those impacts are going to be, and then putting in a plan to deal with them. And finally, digital twins need the ability to be shared and collaborating with our stakeholders. The need for these is imperative. If you've got to access it off your desktop, off mobile devices, it's got to be made available through both internal and external stakeholders. Digital twins are about enabling us to make better decisions. All right, let's go a bit deeper on these topics. Let's look at the beginning, of course, with that collection of the data. We gather it up, we need to integrate it, and we need to manage it. From my own personal experiences, again, over the years, data quality has been a challenge on one or two projects, most projects. It can be really hard to capture. It can be difficult to keep it current and maintained. And at the end of the day, if these things aren't resolved, poor data quality is not only going to result in a loss of time, duplication of work, but it's also going to erode trust in our reporting, trust in our analytics, trust in our outputs. In recent years, there's been a significant investment in GIS to better enable data capture, integration, and management. Things like reality capture technology, allowing data to be captured at scale, at very high accuracy. 3D imagery technology, is providing full city captures, using LiDAR and mesh for built environment, and can be created and then interacted through, new 3D feature extractions. You get into things like the ArcGIS utility network that I mentioned earlier. Now, this is allowing you to model out entire networks from the point of generation, whether that's power or water, whatever it may be, all the way through to the customer at their node. And all of this is, of course, 3D enabled. So it allows us to unlock many of the additional features from within a modern GIS. Now, if you look down at the bottom right of your screen, there's an example here showing how GIS is integrating information models and systems together. And the particular example here from Landtech is starting out with a facility that was scanned with LiDAR, and then the scan was converted into a BIM information model. And now that allowed really detailed visualizations and the attributes to be associated. Now, in addition, the information was then integrated with the assets and works management systems, which really brings together the additional asset information and the work orders for that particular asset component. And what it's showing is a fully integrated workflow from the point of capture through modeling and the integration side. All right, great. So we've captured a bunch of data. So we probably should, have a bit of a look at that. The need to be able to model and visualize how spaces, structures, networks are operating in the real time continues to grow. And it's more than simply showing as I said, a pretty 3D mesh of a city or a building or a landscape. It's about including all the sources of information, all the multiple variables that apply and relate to a particular space. Recent article I saw was estimating that there's roughly more than 50 billion IoT devices globally. And organizations are going to need to be able to bring the critical data sets that those IoT sensors are providing, bringing them together so that they can support these real-time awareness and decision-making. All right, on the top of the screen here, you can see a representation of a bridge construction project. Now, this was tracked and shown here in 5D, so being 3D, X, Y, and Z, but with the addition of time and cost. And this was really allowing the project team and the relevant stakeholders to actually see what was happening for that job and when will it happen. Now, on the bottom of the screen here, we can see a really good example here of BIM and GIS integration in a 3D space. However, this one, it was all configured inside an Esri operations dashboard. Now, this also connected together real-time operating data, bringing together that holistic view of your site. But it's an example of where a digital twin was done inside the Esri stack, whereas others maybe Esri's a component part. Right. So we've captured our information, we can take a look at it. Now we probably should actually go and do something with this data. So another area of significant development in recent years is the way GIS is analysing, providing insights for future outcomes. Things like GeoAI and the advancements in machine and deep learning, they're transforming the way workflows are done, digitizing these workflows, automating many of these processes. Agencies, organizations like your own are likely using these tools for object classifications, determining appropriateness for solar panel placement on roofs or suitability and analysis of site selections. But what they're also doing is they're using the image classification for things like 3D damage assessments following natural disasters, or they're using AI and machine learning to train models for managing vegetation encouragement, optimizing maintenance programs and the like. And finally, GIS is it's being used to assist in the predictive modeling. We're looking forward. It's the what if scenario, you could say. It provides the capability to run these predictive analytics on future failures, based on historical records, historical information, and then even going so far as to improving the work plans, and tasks, improving tasks like route optimizations. So as digital twins continue to grow and evolve, so does the GIS technology that is needed to meet these particular challenges that we're talking about. Now, last but certainly not least, is we need to finish this marathon. We don't want to run all the way up to the finish line, stop, stand there and just stare at it. We need the ability to share and collaborate all of this amazing work that we've been doing, all this information we've brought together, the phenomenal analytics, we need to communicate all this information. And this last area is one where, of course, GIS plays an absolutely essential role. You know, it's how it supports the sharing and the collaboration. GIS is essential, as I said, to the capabilities, taking the information that's been captured, analysed, visualised, and then sharing it out there to those who need to see it in a dynamic and consumable way. Now, the data is, of course, secure. It can be shared collaboratively, both internally and externally, which is, again, all coming back to improving our information transparency and our citizens' engagement. A great example of this is shown here in the story map on the right-hand side. Now, this is a large-scale project in Sydney, Australia. It's on the waterfront at Circular Quay. Many of you would be familiar with the Opera House in Sydney and the Harbour Bridge. This is right in the middle of that. Now, in this particular case, not only was the GIS used to manage the project delivery, you know, from start to finish in very high detail, but it was also used as a way of keeping the public up to date about the status of the project, its progress, what was happening, where they could get more information. And all of this was done using an ArcGIS story map. All right, so that's a walkthrough of the 4 key things of where Esri really enables and provides that foundation for geospatial digital twins. Let's have a quick look at just a couple more examples, a bit more focused. Look, in this example, we're looking at an energy agency. Their need for a digital twin was really focused on improving the confidence of the decisions that they were making, of their decision-making process as a whole. Now, it started out as sort of broad area, suitability analysis, scenario planning there on the left, and being able to aggregate data in a timely manner from, of course, trusted sources. Now, into that, they started adding IoT sensors as they were building up their situational awareness using dashboards and real-time information. Then it's beginning to include the reality capture, you know, from drones, from aerial aircraft or UAVs. What this was doing was then allowing them to enhance the coordination of their asset management into this singular environment. So what we're doing here is we're blending together the 2D, the 3D, current and the proposed information. They have a digital twin that extends on their existing investments, you know, the software and the data and the people they've already invested in, but extending that to meet particular business goals. One more example here is looking at for urban planning, civic engagement. Look, a number of cities shown on here are using a range of tools to gather, review and assess, sharing information and opinions from our communities about the various land use planning and development decisions. We've talked here about the need for digital twins to support collaboration and engagement. And the examples here are really highlighting the opportunities that are provided by a GIS-Centric digital twin to communicate the information. Now, this is information that is often highly technical, but it's being presented in a way that makes it consumable by the stakeholders or the general public. But importantly, it's presenting it without dumbing down the information. It is there, it's just being made more consumable for people to understand. And last one on here, many of you are likely working with AEC firms, the architecture, engineering, construction firms, or at least you have in the past. You know, AEC firms are all over digital twins, rapidly embracing them and using them in some ways as a bit of a wrapper to integrate all of the different project components that they have. And these are often projects that those firms are doing for folk like you. We can see that GIS is creating value across lots of different industries as it begins to interconnect all the things throughout our communities, from being able to model the full underground network of Rotterdam in 3D, or modeling highly accurate detailed water treatment plants. Perhaps you're looking at assessing public transport impacts, you know, with respect to rezoning plans or green space access. Or maybe you're looking to be able to design and interact with buildings and getting into the facilities management side. At the end of the day, GIS is the foundation of digital twins. You know, it's the process and the framework integrating and interconnecting all of these different models into and to create a modern digital twin. Now, actually deploying these a usable, functional digital twin is not something that you should be taking lightly. There's no one magical piece of software that's going to do all of this for everybody for every occasion. And it's with that in mind that it's important to approach this as you would any other major project. It's not to say it has to be costly. You just need to go into it with a very clear intent, focused on achieving a particular goal. I'd suggest approaching digital twins as a strategy, not the, hey, let's build it and they will come. Look, one way you can look at this using the graphic on screen is a very simple guiding framework. You want to understand, plan, act, and then revisit that. Now, you probably already have, or you may already have processes like this in place for programs or projects or business planning within your particular agency. So I'm just going to touch on these briefly here. At the top of the presentation, I spoke about drivers, the reasons why we should be looking at digital twins. Now, when we look at the strategy for deploying a digital twin, we need to be really clear. Like, why are we doing this? Like, what is the specific challenge that this is to solve? What is the purpose it will serve? We also need to understand who needs to be involved in this and who needs to be engaged. As we discussed, digital twins are made up and can be made up of lots of different components. The picture here is like, this is just a very small sample of the palette of tools that are available just through the Esri environment. Now, the idea behind a digital twin is that it's the real business problem we are trying to solve and then putting in place the appropriate tools in combination to solve that challenge. Now, depending on the purpose of the digital twin you're creating, I have no doubt at all that you'll be using a range of functions and tools. Sometimes that's going to be entirely inside an Esri environment, like a couple of the examples we showed. Now, other times, Esri is just going to be one component of that larger picture that you're doing, whatever that may be that you're pulling together. The planning and acting side of things are all about, who's doing what and when, what's related and what's dependent on each different step. Now, these can be laid out in a, in a simple little one-page project strategy, a bit like the image that we have on screen. This is the kind of thing that the Esri professional services guys undertake on a regular basis with clients for all sorts of topics. Now, something like this can be really good for communicating both up to the executive, to management, but it can also be really helpful on communicating to the project team and our stakeholders, keeping people aligned and focused on why are we doing this? Let's get done what we need to get done. At the end of the day, though, it all comes back to why are you doing this? A digital twin can be a fantastical benefit to you. There's improvements in time, accuracy, and in confidence, but you've got to have a reason for doing them. Now, once this is all done, it's time to revisit, it's time to review, and it's time to refine a process to improve whatever it is, because these digital twins need to be maintained. So, I've talked a lot for the last half hour. We've talked through the values of digital twins, what they are, the business drivers of why you should be looking at them. And as many of you have probably come to realize, you've actually probably been doing what's akin to a digital twin for many years. We also talked about the role of GIS and the framework that Esri brings that enables the interconnection and the integrations with the GIS, from our data capture, integration and management, the dynamic visualizations, our analytics, the predictions, and then the fourth one being the sharing and the collaborations. And then finally, we started to talk about some steps to help you get going. It was focusing on the business needs and the outcomes that you're looking for, and then putting in place a strategy, a plan to go and get that done. I come to you, I ask you, kind people who have been listening to me, to do two things for me. I really want you to go and review the goals that you have, that your organization has for digital twins. Literally writing down, how can a digital twin be of value to your organization? What problem is it going to solve? And the second thing I want you to do is I want you to go and call your Esri account manager and tell them what you need from Esri for you to be successful with your digital twins. And yes, you can tell them that Andy told you to call. All right, look, I thank you so much for your time today. And I'm keen now I can see there's a number of questions popped up, so I'm keen to jump in and get some questions that people have been posting. So let's have a look at some of our questions. Mr. Creek, Is there a couple of questions that you'd like to throw a highlight for us?
Yeah, we've got some good ones that came up. The first one is, once the digital twin is launched, what level of GIS experience does a user of the digital twin need to possess?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's something I've heard from a lot of different people. So rephrasing it, we're looking at, once you've got a digital twin up and running, what's the level of geospatial skills that someone needs to have? Look, sometimes I've described this as looking at things like, a web map. You may have a GIS analyst, a GIS officer create the data and bring the information together in ArcGIS Online, create the web map and produce it out there for a user. That was created for a purpose. And digital twins fall into this same pattern. The user needs only to have the skills to be able to drive the tool to get to the answer that they need. If you need them to be undertaking detailed modeling or understand kriging and variograms, for heaven's sake, then that person doing it would need to have the requisite knowledge to be able to do that. But if your digital twin is because you want someone to see the change in time, the change over time of a particular project, like the bridge example, then the knowledge that someone has to have of, first principles GIS, no, they really don't. So a digital twin can be set up to be accessible to all ranges of skills and experience, to be honest. Everything from Joe Public or Jane Public, just needing to get a view, all the way through to perhaps a traffic engineer that's looking at adjusting traffic light patterns for a city because of the changes in traffic flow over time. So it can be lots of different things to lots of different people. If I haven't quite answered the question for the person that posed that one, please feel free to post another query in there, and we can certainly expand on that a bit further for you if we need. Mr. Creek, another question?
Yeah, building on that one a bit, what are some tools within Esri software that help enable that end user experience? Is that something where something we've seen a lot around GeoBIM lately? Is that something that fits in with GeoBIM?
That's a great question. Yeah, there's a lot of information being pushed out about GeoBIM. I think myself has published quite a lot of things on LinkedIn, a lot of articles about it. Look, again, I go back to the point of talking about the component pieces of it. A digital twin can include all sorts of different pieces. It may be a web map built using either Web App Builder or Experience Builder and deployed that way. It may be a whole JavaScript wrap-up that you've built, custom coded. Could be something like GeoBIM, or adding in a similar vein, something like an ArcGIS Urban. These are tools that certainly can provide a method and a way for information to be brought together and then presented out to whoever the intended audience is to achieve whatever particular task that you've put together. Something like GeoBIM, the relationship between GHD and Autodesk has really enabled this to be put together so that different and disparate information sources can be combined and then enabled for staff, for sub-consultants, for community members to access the information that's there. There's a whole wealth of tools that are in the Esri toolbox that you can use, and again, different digital twins may use different ones of those. Again, it's all coming down to what it is that you may need to do. In one case, you may just want to be using ArcGIS dashboard. Great, does exactly what you need, then sweet, use that if that's just what you need. If you need to, or for some reason you've got a connection to, say, like Power BI from Microsoft, great, connect that up, use that, and that becomes your digital twin. It can really vary depending on what your particular needs are. There's lots of the tools that Esri has for producing maps and apps and content. They're all there and available and could be part of your digital twin plan. Again, if I haven't quite got to your heart of your question, please feel free to add more onto there. A couple more, and I think we've got a couple more minutes, Mr. Creek.
Yeah, so as we talked about that end user experience, and we're connecting the data, there's questions around how to get started building, and should they start in Pro or other Esri software? Are there ways to share that data from your digital twin, your interconnected digital twin, out to other platforms, and how do you work with that the best through ArcGIS?
Yeah, I really like this question because it's sort of getting at that point of, okay, well, how do we start to stitch all these things together? So you've heard obviously this session and other conversations and plenty of articles that are on and around, now starting to get down to, okay, now let's roll up some sleeves and do some work. For me, my default way and the way I used to run a consulting practice was around, quite literally, some whiteboard markers on a whiteboard. That was literally where we would start. And in this, I would still suggest that that's not a bad way to go, or pen and paper or virtually, however you prefer to work. The reason I suggest that is because diving straight into go, hey, I'm just going to use this particular tool, may find you that you find yourself painted into a bit of a corner. So to pause and push back and go back to the strategy, the plan, looking at, okay, what is it we're trying to achieve? All right, now we know what we want to get to. Then that can guide where you might want to go with this particular toolkits. We're talking about Esri here. So ArcGIS Pro is probably going to be a big piece of helping prepare the data. Same way many of you would have already worked for many years likely about gathering and gaining content, prepping your geodatabases, building out your schemas and your domains, pushing that information, and then publishing that data. Now, where that publishing goes, that's where it depends very much on what your ultimate aim is for your digital twin. What other systems you might be running, you know, you're running SAPs or Oracles or whatever it may be that you need to connect to. Starting things out though on a piece of paper or a whiteboard, as low tech as that sounds, can be a really great way to just work through and make sure that the tools that you then go and pick up are going to be the ones that are going to help you get to where you need to be. Again, if I haven't quite got to your question, feel free to add more and we'll certainly follow up later. But probably got time for one more question, I think, Andy.
Yeah, absolutely. So where does something like the Esri utility network and the manager for that fit into the digital twin?
Oh, yeah. Again, so that's a really nice question because again, it's these, I see things like utility network, indoors, ArcGIS Urban. For me, these are all component parts. And similar to what I was just talking then about, you know, do you start with Pro? These are tools that you're likely already using that serve our purpose for putting together information that you then build out to get to whatever the end wrapper is that you need to do for your digital twin. Now, again, in some cases, that could live entirely inside an Esri stack. In other cases, the use of utilities, utility network, it might just be the piece where you know, that might be your system of record. Great, you're using that, and then you're connecting off to other systems, and it ultimately, you know, maybe it ends up in Azure, and you've got some really sparkly front end that you've gone and handcrafted. Great, that's fantastic. But for me, things like utility network are these component pieces that you put together to solve a particular challenge you have. You may end up running half a dozen different digital twins for your particular organization, but the data that's coming from is coming from common data environments, brought together, running it through different tools, run different analysis and out to different wrappers to allow you to, again, all that answering questions and engaging people. Again, if I haven't quite got to your question, feel free to add to it and we'll certainly be following up. But I think on my time clock, I think I've probably come to the end of my allotted space here. So again, look, we've talked through the value of digital twins, what they are. We've talked about the role and the framework that GIS provides, you know, that Esri provides, and we've talked about some steps to get you going. Again, I encourage you, have a look at what your needs are and what are the specific challenges that you are actually facing. And then seriously, get on the phone, call your account manager and tell them what your goals are and see how we can help you through that story. And I really do look forward to hearing about your stories, what you're doing with digital twins. And with that, I will hand the microphone back to Megan. She's got some final closing information for you all. It's been an absolute blast being here with you guys. I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for that great presentation. And thanks, Andrew, for helping with the questions. And thank you all for joining us today. We just want to let you know that our next webinar in this series will be a deep dive into imagery capabilities for state and local government. It is scheduled for Wednesday, December 15th at 10 a.m. Pacific. You can register now at the webinar series page listed here. And just a quick reminder, if you can please take a minute to answer the 4 short questions in our survey that will pop up on your screen after the webinar, we would greatly appreciate it. So thank you again for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.